Bom dia! Hoje é 2 de novembro de 2023. Está começando mais uma edição do programa 20 Minutos. Os porta-vozes do sionismo, ideologia encarnada no Estado de Israel, sempre apresentam sua corrente político-ideológica como se fosse a representação dos sentimentos e posições de todos os judeus. Quem fica contra o sionismo, portanto, é antissemita. É esta a versão predominante no Estado de Israel. Há muitos judeus antisionistas, contudo. Parte dessa oposição judaica ao sionismo vem de uma visão laica sobre o Estado, mas há também religiosos antisionistas. Um dos grupos mais relevantes na crítica ao sionismo é o Neturei Karta, traduzindo do hebraico, guardiões da cidade. Eles são ultra-ortodoxos e se opõem ativamente à existência do Estado de Israel. Com cerca de 5.000 integrantes, concentrados principalmente em Jerusalém, são acusados pelos sionistas de serem pró-árabes. Para conhecermos a posição e a história desse grupo, nosso entrevistado de hoje será o Rabino Yisroel Dovid Weiss. Ele ficou mundialmente conhecido quando, em 2006, participou da Conferência Internacional de Revisão da Visão Global do Holocausto, realizada no Irã. Jamais negou o Holocausto, mas deu uma contundente declaração no encontro. Abre aspas. Os sionistas usam a questão do Holocausto em seu benefício. Nós, judeus que perecemos no Holocausto, não a usamos para promover os nossos interesses. Salientamos que existem centenas de milhares de judeus em todo o mundo que se identificam com a nossa oposição à ideologia sionista e que sentem que o sionismo não é judaico, mas uma agenda política. O que queremos não é uma retirada para as fronteiras de 67, mas para tudo que nelas está incluído, para que o país possa voltar para os palestinos e poderíamos viver com eles. Fiquem conosco, já vamos começar. Good morning, Rabbi Weiss. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. An honor to have your presence in our 20 Minutes show.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to present to your esteemed audience with we hope. And I do pray to the Almighty to bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying His message and so to sanctify His name and bring peace to the world with God's help. So it's really a privilege to be on your show.
Rabbi, who are the Neturei Karta?
With the help of the Almighty, Neturei Karta is an Aramaic term. It means Neturei, protectors, Karta of the city. And it is basically the name given to Jews who are simply following the Torah, true to the Torah, and outspoken in explaining and educating the world that the concept of Zionism in the state of Israel is not part of our Jewish religion, is contradictory to our Torah, and they're falsifying and misrepresenting the will of the Almighty, the will of the Jewish people who are true to the Torah around the world.
By the way, Rabbi, what are the main religious branches of Judaism in your interpretation? Could you give us a summary of that?
With the help of the Almighty, Judaism is a covenant that Jews made 3,000 years ago when Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher Moses, went up on Mount Sinai in the presence of the whole Jewish nation, that is 600,000 men from the age of 20 to 60, and the wives, children, and everybody in different age spheres. So we're talking over 1 million people who stood there and watched how the Almighty said to us, I am your God. They all heard this, and they saw Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the Torah, which is this covenant that we made with God to be subservient to Him and to follow the laws of the Torah that was given by God, not written by Moshe Rabbeinu, was given by God. And we accepted this covenant and strictly adhere to this covenant for this last 3,000 years up to today. We do not in any manner, shape, or form change one letter or stray from that teaching. So when any new issues come about, electricity, computer, whatever it may, everything has to conform. Everything we do, we see how this new issue will be acceptable and conform to the Torah. If it's not, then we just don't. We cannot use it. Like say, electric on the Shabbos, on the Sabbath, a Jew has to observe 6 days we work, 7th day we rest to show that God created the world in 6 days. 7th day he rested. So we're not. It says in the Torah we're not allowed to light a fire on the Sabbath. Now, so when the electric came about, the rabbis around the world had to apply the laws of the Torah to this. And they said that we're not allowed to put on electric. Well, if it's burning before the Sabbath, we can leave it. But that's just an example. Now, around 300 years ago, in that range, a group started by Moses Mendelssohn. His name should be obliterated. He was a scholar, but he was an evil scholar. He decided that he will reform Judaism. So he came along and said that Moshe Rabbeinu made the Torah, and we can pick and choose what we like from the Torah. So he made reform Judaism. And today, of course, where they're holding that, of course, they don't observe the Sabbath, they don't observe kosher, anything that is not convenient, they do not accept of the Torah. Yet, in the world, they became a distinguished, accepted, legitimate representation of Judaism. So a branch you would call something of Judaism. So that was the first major movement against a religious Judaism, because till then we have Judaism is Judaism. It's a religion given by Moses. We may have different customs from Sephardic lands, from Spain, Portugal, have different customs different than from Eastern European Jews. I mean, from Yemen has different customs, but we basically share the same exacting belief. We have no problem of intermarrying and so forth because we're one religion. That said, Reform changed. They came along with a new concept, and this is unacceptable. And it's not Judaism. It's like calling Buddhist Judaism. Does that make sense to you? That is what reform means. And therefore, in our communities, in the religious community, we never accept reform as a representation of Judaism. Later, some people saw that reform went way overboard, and they went too far extreme. So a new movement started called conservative Judaism, which is also one of the biggest, big branches, and was probably maybe more than orthodoxy. But they decided that reform went over the deep end, so they became more conservative than reform. But anything that tries to change even one letter of the Torah that's not orthodoxy, that is not Judaism. We don't look at it as a form of Judaism. That's the major branches. I could go a little further. There's others today that they have some variances, but these were the major branches. The majority of Jews, unfortunately, do not observe the Torah. They are not Orthodox. And then Zionism came along, which we have to explain.
Let me ask you something, Rabbi. Many Jewish religious groups have supported the creation of the state of Israel and are allied with Zionism. Why do the Neturei Karta oppose this position?
Yes, again, Neturei Karta, Aramaic for protecting the city. It's not a different part of Judaism. It's the basics. It's just people who are vocal from the religious community that are trying to clarify to the world what Judaism is, and that we do not accept Zionism. It's protectors of the city, because Zionism came as a movement of Eastern Europe, came from Austria, a group of people who were basically heretics, and they wanted to transform Judaism from this subservience to God of 3,000 years. It's a mere 130, 50 years old, the movement. They're going to transform it into nationalism, a base concept of having a piece of land with an army, with an Olympic team, and all the trappings of a country. But it's void of godliness. And they proudly announce they're a democracy. That's what Zionism says. They're a democracy. You don't have to keep the Sabbath. You can do what you want. So it's totally antithetical. It's contradictory what Judaism is. And also, the Torah warned us 3,000 years ago. We were given the Torah, told us to go to the Holy Land to serve God in holiness. But 2,000 years ago, we were sent into exile because we weren't on the proper level of holiness. We were dispersed amongst the nations and expressly warned by God through the prophets, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, King Solomon, who wrote very clearly that once we are in exile, we are forbidden to attempt to return en masse in large numbers or to rebel against any nation. We have to be loyal citizens in every country we reside. And thirdly, we're not to make any attempt of leaving exile. So Zionism, when this group of people came, these heretics, and wanted to make an ersatz Judaism, a new Judaism. So first of all, it's not Judaism. Just like Reform isn't, it's just not Judaism. But it's contradictory, and it's a rebellion against God. Even if it would have been religious, it would be unacceptable because God warned us. God said, because of our sins, we were sent into exile, not because we were physically weak. So to go ahead and establish a Jewish sovereignty, regardless if it would be really orthodox or not, would be contradictory to what Judaism is. It's like somebody's going to say, I'm a religious Jew, but the do not kill is not part of my religion. That I'm leaving out of it. Returning and creating a state is a heresy. It's a rebellion against God, who warned us. God says, I put you into exile because of you're not being on the right level, and the end of exile will only come about, which we yearn and hope for, when God will make a metaphysical change in the world. All humanity will stop being atheists. They will recognize there's one God, serve him in harmony. Then the Almighty will return us, and he himself will build a temple without any intervention, human intervention. So to try to return and create a sovereignty is a direct rebellion against God. And all the rabbinical authorities around the world, from the Sephardic lands to Palestine, to the Jewish, we have in Argentina a beautiful group there, but wherever there was a very religious community, and Europe, it was prior to the living in the United States. Today you have these communities in the United States. Every one of these religious leaders vehemently opposed and declared that Zionism is unacceptable. It is to be ostracized. This is the fact of Judaism. Before the Second World War, there was no such thing as Zionism to be accepted. They were purely ostracized from the Jewish communities. Unfortunately, because of the upheavals and the suffering of Jews, they were given by Britain the rights over the land. They became powerful. They became, and the Jewish people, the leaders, were slaughtered in the Holocaust. 6 million or more Jews were murdered, and all our leaders were the first to be murdered. Jews were sheep without a pastor, somebody to lead them. So without a shepherd, and we didn't have to. So therefore, the Zionists were able to breach, to come in and tell the world, to try to convince the world that they are that it's part of Judaism. They use the Star of David, the name Israel, and that God gave us the land 3,000 years ago. He promised us the land, and we are just fulfilling the dream of God of returning to the land. The end of, they call themselves a Schalta de Gula, beginning of redemption, because they conveniently ignore that we were sent into exile. They count on the ignorance of the masses, certainly the Christian evangelistic Christians and so forth, who just know the children of Israel, the land of Israel, that they should return, and they count on the majority of Jews that are reformed, that the Reformed Jews, they don't even know their religion, and many of the people are ignorant. Many people are, like I say, sheep who went through the Holocaust, children. Only the youth mostly remained alive. So they told them, oh, we suffered so much, now God is giving back the land. They counted on the lack of knowledge of people, and they made a rabbinate, a chief rabbi, or masquerading in our religion. But till today, the rabbinical authorities around the world, invariably, you will go to London, Stamford Hills in London, that you were showing pictures of before, I believe, and or you go to Mea Shearim in Jerusalem.
You are telling
you go to
us.
New York. Let me just finish this. In New York, the second largest Jewish community you have, the concentration of religious Jews of Williamsburg, Brooklyn. There's not one single Israeli flag, because we know that because the more the religious, the more clear that it is impossible to combine the two. Zionism is nationalism, a rebellion against God, forbidden according to the Torah. Judaism is subservience to God.
Many critics to Zionism say this ideology is racist and colonialist. Do you agree with these opinions?
You know, we believe that certainly it is criminal. It is oppressing other people. If the exact terminology, political terminology, I can't tell you. It is stealing the land from the Muslim and Arab people. It is from the Palestinians. It is oppressing. It is totally illegal according to the Torah. We're not to kill or to steal. Because I hate with the Zionists to go in, because they're very sly and very shrewd, and we never accuse them of not being efficient, but we do accuse them of being sinful, of being criminal. So when you're going to every terminology you're going to use, I'll just say that it seems racist. It seems that they're colonizing. What it is stealing the land, taking the land from a people, totally forbidden according to the Torah. We as Jews are not allowed to steal or kill. We're not allowed to have a state, even if it would have been uninhabited. We would stand in total opposition because God put us into exile. We're forbidden to have a land. Certainly, we're not allowed to create our own state by killing or stealing or oppressing. And as I mentioned earlier, part of exile is to be loyal citizens in every country we reside. On top of that, Jewish people are required to show gratitude for good that has been done to them. In Spain and Portugal, people know we went through the Inquisition, Crusades. We went through many, many suffering, trials and tribulations. When they tried to forcefully convert the Jews to Christianity. What happened was Jews were banished from the land. They escaped and they went and they were embraced by the Muslim and Arab countries from the Ottoman Empire. Many of these lands took us all in, and including in Palestine. We flourished in their lands, and even though we have a distinctly different religion than the Muslims, we believe in one God, but we have a distinctly different religion, and yet we had no problem. Of course, we were able to. The Ottoman Empire, they let us pray by the Western Wall. We had no problems of coexisting. We lived together in total harmony. So, so we have to show gratitude to this. Now, Zionism, in order to create their state, so they have a problem because of the indigenous population, which was the majority Muslim. The second majority was Christian, and then there was the Jewish community. So to establish the state, and they were having people who opposed them, they had to declare to the world that there's an ingrained hate from the Muslims to the Jews. How despicable, how repulsive, repugnant. We cannot accept to hear this. We have to show gratitude and be thankful to the people. And here they're coming, and in order to accomplish their goal, they are vilifying a people that was good to us. And so therefore, that's a third reason. One, we're not allowed to state. One, we're not allowed to kill, steal. One, we have to show gratitude. What they're doing is in every facet, in every shape and form. The Zionist state of Israel is a rebellion against God, against the words of our Torah. And although they desperately try to incorporate and convolute Judaism with Zionism and declare it's the Torah, God gave us the land, and they use emotions, our suffering by the Holocaust. My grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. Majority of my family died there. My father escaped. They still, but they try to use this fear mongering that the people, the Arabs are like the Nazis, they want to kill you. They try to use this guilt ride that the world should say, hey, we were silent when Jews were being killed, so therefore we have to assist them in establishing a Jewish state. This is all they use in ploys, the Holocaust, other ploys to solidify and accomplish their goal. But we as religious Jews declare that it is not Judaism, it is false, and they're falsifying and hijacking, abusing the name of our Torah. It is rebellion against God. It is criminal. It is unacceptable. I just want to show you. Here's a picture how we used to live together before there was Zionism. Here's a picture how the rabbi, there's more pictures of that. There's pictures of how the rabbis pleaded, this meant in the 1920s, the chief rabbi of our communities in Palestine, not to be confused with the Zionist rabbinate. This is from the Eid HaCharei, the God-fearing community. Met with the king of Transjordan. And in 1920s, 1947, the chief rabbi, after he passed on, the next chief rabbi was Rabbi Dushinsky, met with the delegation of the United Nations, and he declared, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. Since then, the Jewish community has been demonstrating in thousands, tens of thousands, and hundreds of thousands in the streets of Jerusalem, because they have a beautiful, large community that lived and in Palestine prior to Zionism, and they were also from the communities who declared we don't want a Jewish state. Not only the Muslim and the Christian, but the Jewish community were opposed to this influx, or this encroaching on the community, on this beautiful Holy Land, the Zionists. We demonstrate in New York, in Washington, tens of thousands. It never gets reported because the media is afraid of being labeled as anti-Semitic. We get brutally beaten, old men, young children. We're never militant. We don't carry guns. We stand on the streets of Jerusalem since the creation of the state and prior to that, and we say it's not Judaism. They're stealing our name. It's not religion. It's a flawed, selfish political movement. Here you see girls being arrested because they refuse to serve in the IDF. Every boy and girl of our communities that turns 17 becomes a criminal because it's mandatory military service. We refuse to serve in the army. Again, they're brutally beaten day and night, and nobody even reports on this because, after all, it's the state of Israel. They certainly aren't anti-Semitic. That's what people would say. And therefore, they have what they're doing to the people. It must be coming to them. You see the treading on them. They kill, they assassinate, arrest, and beat the Jewish people who refuse to accept their existence, even though we peacefully demonstrate. Here they're spraying them with stink water that ruins their clothing to discourage demonstrations. And so we just want the world to know that. Here we are. You can see when they made the PLO, we had a representation with the Palestinian people. So this is the sad history of the Jewish opposition. Yet they point to the settlers. They point to their rabbinate, because unfortunately they use idealists and people who go to the universities who are lacking the knowledge of the Torah, and they say, hey, this is Judaism, and they're always able to ensnare and get a following of some religious, usually what they call modern religious. Almost always you'll see the difference between them and us. In other words, modern we call a euphemism for a compromised religion. People who don't know their religion, modern society joins them. And that's why you get confused and you think that the religious people also support it. And they have in the Knesset, they have people there, but the majority of Jews around the world, the vast majority of the very religious, will be anti-Zionist, because it is not possible to join Judaism with Zionism. And we cry and hurt with the people of Palestine. We cry and hurt with the people of Gaza because of this terrible, it's all because of the Zionist state of Israel. We are not condoning violence. The 1,400 people are killed. But why were they killed? We lived together. We lived in peace till Zionism. They tried to tell the world it's not true, but we lived. We have the history that's clear if anybody wants to see it. We lived in peace. Zionism came, and since then there's death. Even not only the Jews who are against the Zionists who get killed by them, but simply because of their existence, the hate that was created every action brings a reaction. So even the 1,400 people that died this last week, we put the blame squarely on the Zionists. Their hands are covered in blood, and they are the essence of anti-Semitism. Zionism, the state of Israel, is anti-Semitism. They exacerbate anti-Semitism around the world. They cause death and suffering of Palestinians day and night. And here we see the shocking bombing of the people of Gaza. Day and night, they're bombing them, murdering so many people.
Rabbi, before we talk about Gaza, I would like to ask you a sensible question. You became known worldwide when you participate in Tehran in the international conference to review the global vision of the Holocaust, which took place in 2000. 6. Isn't it contradictory that a rabbi took part in a supposedly denialist conference as this one?
You know, that's just part of, I said, the proficiency of the efficiency of the Zionist state. They always manage, just like right now, people in Gaza are being murdered, bombed upon. They're close to 7,000, I think. Tens of thousands are injured. Most probably close to 20,000 are injured. It's unbelievable. It insults the intelligence of the world when they're doing this to the people of Gaza, and the world is silent, and they can let them do it because of their narrative. They could vilify the Palestinians, that they're anti-Semitic, and therefore they have the right to bomb them. God forbid. It's false. They're not anti-Semitic. And how they're able to the world support their narrative, it's because they're able to confuse constantly, instead of looking at with intelligence, logic, that it's purely because of Zionism that we have 75 years of death. No, once it was the PLO, today it is the Hamas, and therefore they have a right to bomb, and the world accepts it. When they see that it's putting a band-aid on a hemorrhaging wound, you're going to stop the Hamas today, and tomorrow it'll be something else. And yet the world accepts what they're doing, killing, murdering en masse, and when it's totally illogical, will accomplish nothing, will only make more hate. Because how many will you kill? There's still 4 million people lost. I don't know how many Palestinians and Arabs in refugee camps in Gaza alone, 2.2 million people. So you killed a little. You're making hate to the highest level. It is ridiculous. It is criminal. It is unacceptable. We plead with the world to stop. I'm getting to your issue of the Holocaust. The Holocaust conference. My grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. My father escaped from Hungary when they came. My father-in-law wasn't, of all blessed memory, was in Auschwitz. The vast majority of our families in our communities who are anti-Zionist are all children of the Holocaust, almost entirely. A lot of us, at least, because we also have to describe the countries. It's in our blood, the Holocaust. We do not deny the Holocaust, but Zionists, their efficient ways and the sly and conniving style is by labeling it a Holocaust denial conference. It did not call itself the Holocaust denial conference. And in fact, there were many professors. I was at that conference. There were many people who were supposed to come to that conference, distinguished scholars from around the world. But the Zionists put so much pressure on them that they could not come. And the ones who did come, almost entirely, if you look at the minutes of the conference, they all said that there was the Holocaust. Yet, and this was by the opening session alone, with 1,000 or more media outlets from there, from whether it was BBC, whether it was every single one around the world, Reuters, and everybody who you'd like was there. And they all heard how the foreign minister said, this is not to deny the Holocaust, it is. He said it's because we simply don't want that the Holocaust should be used to oppress the Palestinian people. They said if anybody has a comment, I immediately stood up right after the opening statements of the foreign minister, and I said, it's recorded, I said, we are here to speak about that the 6 million or more, whatever Jews were killed in the Holocaust, yet if they should not be used as a tool to criminally to kill the Palestinian people, to take their land, to occupy Palestine. My grandparents' blood is boiling because they were religious Jews. They died because they were Jews. And yet to take them, their death, and to use it to rebel against God as a tool to occupy that is unacceptable. At the conference, as I say, the majority spoke like that. There were a few individuals who started saying that it wasn't as great, the Holocaust, and they were shushed out of there. Everyone went when they started speaking at one of the panels. I was on that panel with these people, said that wasn't maybe so much, and we gave them, and we assorted them. We gave them a real dressing down. The people that were there, and they said, "How dare you?" So it was not a Holocaust denial conference. That's false. That's patently false, and it's just one of the Zionist ploys. I'll even add to that. Associated Press made a statement, and it was hundreds of newspapers. Associated Press stated that Rabbi Weiss said that the Holocaust was exaggerated. When it took 2 weeks till I came home. When I came home, it was already spread out in the newspapers, and I threatened them with a lawsuit, but I should have gone through with the lawsuit. But they had to make to correct it. That they said it wasn't, that I didn't say it, and we have the papers where they had to say it. And just this last few months, I went to England, and also the Zionist papers wrote that I said something like that, and other issues that's false, and they had to restate it that it's totally false, and they had to, although they didn't want to, but they had no choice. We had the papers. You can look in the Tribune. They just had 2 months ago, a big article that had to say that we made a mistake. It wasn't true. We slandered Rabbi Weiss. It wasn't true. But of course, nobody hears the fact that they had to retake what they said. Because nobody looks at these little comments that they're saying. They just look at the headlines that Rabbi Weiss said it was exaggerated. How I would say such a thing when the majority of my family were killed? My statements were all recorded. You can go to our site, nkusa.org. So it's just a ploy of Zionism. And this is a simple, it's just one example, a very good example how Zionism works. They falsify, they vilify people, they falsify because they have no morals of the Torah. They don't care what God says. So they don't have compunctions to use the name of Judaism, although they know it's totally against God, against the Jewish religion, because they simply want to reach their goal of having a land. They're ready to sacrifice on the altar of Zionism Palestinian lives, Jewish lives, and they don't care that 1,400 people were killed as long as they'll be able to reach their goal.
Rabbi, what's your opinion about the solution proposed since 1947 by the United Nations, that of building two sovereign states, one Jewish and the other Palestinian?
We believe that there's God who rules the world, who rewards, who punishes, and nobody, asks. There's the tsunami, there's a plague, all the earthquakes, and we believe that God is just, God is compassionate, and everything that happens, we have to be introspective and see why He brings this. We don't understand many of the issues. We don't understand a lot of issues of the Holocaust, but we try to understand why God brought this. This is the basics of Judaism. We also know that God created the Satan, the Shatan. The Satan is given the permission to try to fool the world and bring them to do what's terrible crimes, and the person has to be able to be better than that and not fall into the hands of the Satan. That's what the world is all about through the generations. They created the United Nations by the Second World War, because there was such world suffering. They said we have to create a body of the world leadership in order that there should be peace on the world. And what do? One of the first issues they do is to ratify the state of Israel, which means the majority of Jews, the majority of people, of the inhabitants of Palestine were Muslim. The second largest community were Christian. The third were Jews. All three of them opposed the creation of the state. Yet they'll ratify this creation of a state of Israel, and they will get, and that it should be a so-called a Jewish state, which it isn't, but so-called a Jewish state that's going to rule over a large part of the Holy Land. What does that mean? That the inhabitants all of a sudden will have to be subservient to a state that's not their religion, that automatically any person with the slightest sense, with logic, with intelligence will tell you that means there's going to be agitation, there's going to be a rift, there's going to be hate, there's going to be trouble. How dare they do such a thing? Yet they ratified a state of Israel in a land that was beautiful fabric of coexistence of Muslims, Jews, Arabs, Christians. So for hundreds of years, till Zionism came about, like around 50 years before the state was declared. But so instead of seeing a solution to remove the agitator, the interloper, the people that this movement that came from somewhere else that all of a sudden ruined the coexistence, so instead they're going to give it a half the land. Wow, what lack of intelligence. I don't want to insult the world body, but so you see, it has to be the works of Satan. It doesn't make any sense. It is wrong. We as Jews stood up from day one. We said we do not accept the existence even 1 inch of the state of Israel. It's against God. It is unacceptable. It's not a Jewish state. We'll never give up our name for this heretic movement called the Zionist state of Israel. And going today, I'll just let you ask, but going to today, the same thing in Gaza. It defies logic. It insults our intelligence to buy into what Zionists are saying. We're going to destroy Hamas. Again, we're not we're not condoning violence, but it's a reaction. So yesterday was PLO, today it's Hamas. Tomorrow, after they murdered all these people in Gaza, it'll be something else because people cannot be occupied. So it insults the intelligence of the world by doing what they're doing, and that they get supported by world leaders to bomb and bomb and bomb. And there's people lying in the wards without any medical aid. They're making operations without putting them to sleep. Without
terrible. What to do right now? Because the state of Israel is the reality right now. What to do from here to the future? I mean, what's the solution for the region, for both Jewish people and Palestinian people? What to do? A multinational state? What to do?
Let us look at South Africa. South Africa was here. They were a part of the body of the United Nations. Their ambassador was His Excellency. Imagine, he's His Excellency, who is representing a state that says the black people can't drink from the same fountain. The black people have to go to the back of the bus. The black people are mistreated. And yet they were given the respect as a legitimate, distinguished country. And the ones who opposed them were thrown into prison. Nelson Mandela was a terrorist thrown into prison. So yet, and so somebody could throw up their hands and say, well, forget about it. It's here. This is the facts of life, and we have to make do with it and maybe make a two-state solution. The world had the grassroots, the people like me and you and people around the world who said this is unacceptable, and they put pressure on their governments. They said, you may be comfortable in your position, and if you'll stand up against Zionism, you may be blackballed, and you may be considered an anti-Semite because you're standing up. But because you want your votes, you want your political position. But we will insist, as people who have humanity, we call godliness. The people around the world, just like against South Africa, they stood and stubbornly continued till it stopped. Remember, till 100 years ago, Jews, without any human rights groups to protect them, lived in every single Arab country, in Egypt, in Iran, in Tunisia, in Yemen, Lebanon, Iraq. We had communities that flourished, that put out our greatest leaders, our greatest rabbis. So we had no problem because of even with a distinctly different religion, to coexist. Zionism came, and everything became a quagmire of death and suffering. So now you ask what could be done? Use the logic of the world should see. They just simply will have to turn to them and say, kids, this is enough. You can't do this. It's impossible. We have to remove this. Remember, it's called the Republican Party, Democratic Party, the party of Israel. Remove this party that's celebrating. Remove the party of Israel, so that we'll be able to coexist. I met with the people in Lebanon, Hezbollah. We went to Gaza. We met with the leaders. We were in Al Azhar when they made the meeting. The Mufti of the Grand Mufti of Al Azhar. We met with all the Sunni leaders, with the Shiite leaders. Everyone, unabashedly, said to the world, "We are not against Jews." In Iran, they say we are not against Judaism, only against Zionism. They're clear in that. And that's why the Zionists hate Iran, by the way, because they state clearly we are not against Judaism. They have synagogues with big letters on the outside in Hebrew, that the synagogues. We went to the people of Gaza, and they embrace us. It is possible to be done. Therefore, the world has to recognize you must remove the impediment to peace, the cause of anti-Semitism, the cause of bloodshed of the Palestinians. It can be done, and it will be done. And the Torah says, why you're rebelling against me, God says it will not be successful. It can be done, and it must be done. Two-state is not the solution. The solution is removal of an occupation of a political entity that's governing over the people that are rightfully theirs. If they're a criminal group, it can be removed. It can be done. We should pray to God because God is the Almighty, and we believe that He is the power of the world, that He should help us bring about speedily and peacefully, just like at the end of apartheid happened at the end, and USSR that really tried to stifle religion in one day. It can happen, and we have to not be stubbornly standing on the streets and having the world governments uncomfortable with their position they're taking, putting a stop to the support, putting a stop to the justification of killing of the people in Palestine and of occupying them.
How do you analyze the Hamas attacks against Israel on October 7th?
We cry, we hurt for the deaths that are happening for 100 years since Zionism came about. As I said, Jews were beaten mercilessly by the Zionists for all these 75 years, attacked. This is the Jews who are against Zionism. But then there's the Jews who fall prey to Zionism, and these idealists and people who learn in the university, and they decide to go up on a mountain, on the hilltop, and make a settlement because they think, they buy into it that it's God's will for Zionists. We're not condoning what they're doing either, but they fall prey to Zionism, and because of that, they're putting their children in danger on the top of the hilltop, and then they're killed. There was the suicide bombers, all the history. All these people are dying because there's a powerful PR, public relations, and a voice of Zionism that is fooling, that is confusing people's minds. That's what they're doing is proper, and they know that they're fooling people, that it's not Judaism, because they try to breach every law of the Torah. They dig up graves for archaeological purpose that's forbidden according to the Torah. They constantly try to abolish the Jewish religious communities. They know what they are, but they're confusing people. And because of them, there's death of Jews, 100 years of death of Jews, the ones they kill and the ones that die because of them. So now in this last week, what happened was 1,400 people died. They were killed because of the Hamas went out and killed them. We're not condoning the death. We're not saying, we cry and we say that these tens of thousands of people that died, the Palestinians and the Jews, but it's clearly the result of the evil. Why a doctor who would be considered a criminal if he would just put a cortisone or a Band-Aid on a hemorrhaging wound and say you're okay and ignore what's going to happen next week? This by saying that Hamas is the ones, you're playing into the hands of the Zionist cruelty of their occupation and insulting your own intelligence.
But do you think
that Israel? It's the state of Israel that is the cause of the 1,400 people to die. It's the criminal. Their hands are covered in blood. Stop them, and there won't be any Hamas. Stop them, and there won't be any Hezbollah. They will all stop because we live together. We want to live together. Our fabric of the Holy Land and of the Arabic lands is Jews living with Muslims. You cannot deny our history.
But do you think that Hamas violence is legitimate?
We're not getting into issues that the Zionists want us to talk about. We are not getting into the fact. We are getting into the fact that there are people that are occupied, that are dying, that we don't understand with how they can exist like this. And it is the automatic result, the natural result of being occupied to respond. I'm not going to get into that at all. I'm not going to dignify. That's the talking point. Not that you're trying. I don't mean you, but it's the talking point of Zionism that's trying to obfuscate, to divert from what we have to immediately confront and talk about. Death every single minute of the people in Palestine and Jews. That is purely, directly because of the occupation that is ongoing every minute. And we have to stop and somehow scream to the world that right this second, give medical aid, give cease and desist the bombing and give medical aid. Those people don't have anesthesia. They don't have. They're dying. They don't have medication. They've been bombed 20,000, whatever this are, injured there. The world dare not be silent. And we're going to talk about issues that have irrelevant because it's Zionism that is causing this. It's do not insult our intelligence. We should not be pulled into the Zionist the way they want us to talk.
But Rabbi, don't you think that Israel has the right to self-defense as advocated by the Netanyahu government and its allies?
They don't have a right to exist. I'm asking you, if somebody would come into, God forbid, into your house with a gun and say and shoot one member, God forbid, not to you, but and shoot a second and then stand there and then somebody's going to get up a stick and start hitting them and they go, wow, you made me bleed, and they just and then he's going to say, I'm going to kill you, and so we're going to ask, we're going to freeze for a second. We'll turn to a third. The police walk in. And you'll ask the police, what do we have to do here? He says, well, that guy has a right to resist. You just punched him in the arm. He has a right to resist. Do you realize how ridiculous the question, what's going on here? They have a right to resist. They're occupying. They were warned. They were warned by the Jewish inhabitants. They were warned by our rabbinate that lived there for hundreds of years. Our rabbis pleaded with them. Our rabbis stood up. The community that was living there for hundreds of years, they said, you are people, persona non grata. You are not the fabric of the Holy Land. You are not Jewish. You are not representing Judaism. You are masquerading as Jews. We stood up. We demonstrated constantly. They came and they caused death. There were suicide bombers. There was intifada. Everything happened because of them. And then they stand up and say, we're victims. We're innocent victims. We're going to have to make IDF, Israeli Defense Force. Not an army. They have an Israeli Defense Force. I mean, again, they're insulting the intelligence of the world. They are rebelling against God in my name, and they're doing something criminal. That's a nekba, what the Arabs call it, and that is the word. And we really, really have to insist that we plead with the world leaders. Use your intelligence. Stand up. Stop this occupation. Stop and this on this second. Save the people of Gaza.
Do you think that Israel's attacks on the Gaza Strip represent an ethnic cleansing operation or even genocide, as many people say?
Again, I told you, they're very wily, the Zionists. So I don't know what words in English they are, but they're mass murdering the people. They want to wipe them out. They want to not wipe them out. They want them removed from Palestine. They wouldn't care if the Palestinian people are living in Africa. That would be fine by them. So they may say that it's a word's difference, that it sounds like genocide, it looks like genocide, it sounds like ethnic cleansing, it looks like ethnic cleansing. They say if it walks like a duck, it talks like a duck, it is a duck. That's what I'm saying. But whatever it may be, people say if it's the Holocaust. We said the Holocaust, the Nazis, Jews tried to escape. My father tried to get his parents out. The people tried to escape. No, they wanted to murder every Jew. So maybe there's a difference between the Holocaust and that. There is a difference because, like I say, they wanted to totally eradicate Jewish people and other people who they were against. The Zionists would be very happy if the Palestinian people will march out and go to Egypt, and Egypt's not far enough. They would want them in Africa or in Asia. They don't want them near them because they shouldn't come back. That's what they want. So against the exact literal word for it, but it looks like we say genocide and ethnic cleansing and so forth. It is a crime against the Almighty, the one who created the world, who the world belongs to. They have no right. The existence of the Zionist state of Israel, they have no right to exist. They are not a Jewish state. They are an anti-Semitic entity.
Are the Neturei Karta mobilizing against the war?
We've been, our people have been around the world tirelessly standing up, pleading with the world, speaking up, and trying to get the world to wake up from what they're in from sleepily walking together with the Zionists in a sleepwalk, together with the Zionists. And they're just continuing, but it was, always the evil people who hate the Zionists. Yeah, we have to give them another gun. Yeah, something happened, another gun. So we go around. There would be, let me tell you, tens and tens of thousands of more Jews outspoken. and most probably in the hundreds of thousands. And I withdraw that. I retract that. It's not tens, but hundreds of thousands would be outspoken, because we have hundreds of thousands of Jews, anti-Zionists, who live in Palestine and around the world. They would all be outspoken against Zionism because it's an injustice done in the name of our religion. But they aren't, because of the Zionist attacks, vicious attacks of the Jews. Just this last week, they broke into the homes last week in the religious Jews' homes, because they had demonstrated by day. And part of their ploy is to psychologically affect people, that they should not be able to be frozen, not to take action. So they broke into the homes of the ones who demonstrated, and they arrested them. They destroyed synagogues. They went into synagogues, turned it upside down, took, of course, confiscated everything they could find in the homes of the furniture and everything in the homes of the Jews. They arrested them in Palestine and Jerusalem. And we went to a demonstration in Manhattan. They came back later to our car. The tar tires were slashed. The window, the mirrors were broken. The car was keyed, and they threaten our lives. And the people hear that around the world, how they threaten us, how they try to destroy the lives of the people who are anti-Zionist, and therefore, and that's when the Jews. Amongst the non-Jews, anybody knows a politician who speaks up against them or shows sympathy for the Palestinians is committing political suicide. There's books written about that. Finley, congressman, was four-time incumbent, and he wrote a book about it. He lost his job because he spoke up for Palestine. They call them anti-Semites. A newspaper that speaks up against, that shows sympathy for Palestinians or presents our view or something like that. It happens once, they may forgive them. It happens twice, they have a campaign and they destroy their media outlet. They destroy the politicians. So everybody's afraid to be outspoken. Still in all, thank God, the chief rabbi of Palestine, who was after this Rabbi Dushinsky, who I showed you, his name was Rabbi Joel Teitelbaum, Rabbi Joel Teitelbaum. He was the chief rabbi in Palestine, not of the Zionist chief rabbi. Remember, that's a farce. From the Eidah Haredis, God-fearing community. He himself moved to New York and remained with the title chief rabbi in the 1950s, 1960s, and 72 he passed on. And he kept on urging people of the Jewish communities. He said, if it's possible, move away. Don't be under the occupation. That said, most people couldn't move. You can't get visas, you can't this. So you have hundreds of thousands living the anti-Zionists. But he urged his followers, he said, I plead with you, go out onto the streets at the cost of your lives. Let us speak up and tell the world that this is not Judaism. It's a desecration of God's name. It's a sullying the name of Judaism. And he used to cry, and we hear the tapes.
Anti-Zionism is not the same thing that anti-Semitism.
Anti-Zionism is pro-Semitism, because Zionism is the greatest exacerbator of anti-Semitism around the world. All the Arab and Muslim countries that consider themselves a ummah, one nation. So people in Malaysia support. You have 2.5 billion, I believe, Muslims around the world. I believe I think it's 2.5 billion. Yes, Muslims. They all are standing in sympathy with the Palestinians. So in one stroke, Zionism is creating a hatred, and people unfortunately confused. They think that the more the religious the Jew, the more he's religious, so he must support the state. So therefore, when a Jew is living in France, a Jew is living in any other country, they may attack him, God forbid. And again, we're not condoning the attacks, obviously, but they may, because they're so frustrated what's happening to their brothers in Palestine, they may attack a Jew. It's criminal, but they may do that because of that selfish political state that's existing there. So they're the greatest anti-Semites, exacerbate of anti-Semitism, and they are anti-Semitic. The way they beat Jews, like the pictures you're showing, they brutally beat, they arrest, they assassinate our rabbis. Rabbi Teitelbaum himself there was attempts on his life. They tried to assassinate him. He stood up anyway. Till the end of his days, he stood up and spoke out. And he had the right to ask Jews to speak up at the cost of their lives, because he himself put himself up to being killed. And he spoke up constantly. And that is what Judaism is, to sanctify God's name and to speak up against Zionism, till ultimately you will see that one day there will not be a state of Israel because it's a rebellion against God, and God has the power in the world. We don't know why he created a tsunami. We don't know why he let the Satan create the state of Israel, but it will end. We only pray to him that it should happen speedily and peacefully without any more bloodshed.
Rabbi Weiss, I would like to thank you very much for your time and for this conversation of great interest to our audience. Thank you for the opportunity you gave to our viewers and to myself.
Thank you. It is an honor and a privilege.
Agradeço também a todos e todas que assistiram a esse programa, em especial aqueles e aquelas que puderam fazer contribuições financeiras ao nosso site e ao canal de Opera Mundi no YouTube. Sem vocês, nosso trabalho não seria possível e não faria sentido. Um grande abraço a todos e a todas.